Welcome back to the second part of your favorite Pan-African show, Bottomline Africa. We're glad you've stayed with us tonight. And in our discussion tonight, it's a one-man show. So we're going to talk about the sports industry in Africa, perhaps what's ailing this industry. We're going to talk about football, maybe athletics, as well as badminton, because I have an individual here who has experience when it comes to badminton. He's Peter Gacheru, who's the CEO, IMG. You also have a background when it comes to sports administration and management. And you're also once a badminton coach?
A player, actually.
A player.
Yeah.
Good evening, Gacheru. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Yusuf.
So let me begin with the first topic. Of course, it has everything to do with football. I'm not going to ask you about the technical stuff, but there's Champions League that is going on at this hour, and so many Kenyans are hooked up. You know, they're glued to their TV stations. I mean, why isn't the same attention given to perhaps the Kenyan Premier League or other leagues in Africa?
I think the answer to that is rather obvious, because what happens is that with the Champions League, I'm sure there are many people who are going to stay up tonight just to watch the game and following through, and you can see the following is quite fanatical. Also with the English Premier League, you can see the following, the Bundesliga, La Liga. People watch sport for entertainment value. So currently, I know with our Kenya Premier League, we are struggling to even just get enough people into the stadium to watch, other than when the two big teams are playing. Most of the other 16 teams would be struggling to actually get a reasonable following into the stadium. But it is the entertainment value. People go to enjoy themselves. They do not go out of obligation. The people who are staying up tonight, they could as well be watching something else.
They've not been forced to watch the Champions League.
They've not been forced to watch this.
So you're saying the quality of football, not just in Kenya, let's not just zero in on Kenya, but the whole continent. Are you saying the quality of football is wanting?
Yeah, in fact, most of us are treated to quite a number of channels, say on SuperSport, that is available in our country. And you get to watch some of the local matches even in South Africa. And you will notice that the stadiums are actually empty. So it is the quality of entertainment that is actually there. But the same public, we see them going to watch music shows and it's full. Comedy shows and it's full.
The same attention is not given to football.
The same attention is not given to actually sport. This weekend in Nairobi at Kasarani, we had the qualifiers for the Commonwealth Games. It was free to enter Kasarani, but I doubt we had 5,000 people in there. And we have to create a good presentation in the game. The presentation has to be quality. Even on the televised games, one of the reasons that people are hooked up on the Champions League tonight is the presentation of the game. The production of that game is first class.
So the blame should not lie with just the players, from what you're saying? It has to do with how all this product is packaged, perhaps?
I think we can't put it just on the players. Players are just one of the actors.
Yes.
I think we have to look at the whole ecosystem in sports. One of the things that drives people to go and watch sport is following stars. Not just champions, but stars. And I'll say our athletics, we have a lot of champions, but they're not stars.
Okay, what's the difference between
There's a huge difference. Stars actually have brands. There are brand names behind them. But last year, there are 6 marathons, what they call the Great 6 Marathons, the world great. Kenya won 5 of them.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm talking about the men. We just missed one. And I'm sure Yusuf will struggle to name three Kenyans who actually won the 5 biggest marathons in the world. Yeah. So a star must, just create some following. People actually go to watch Arsenal because there's somebody they're following. They talk about these people. They talk about how this guy is moving from this team to the next team. There is a following behind them. They love them. They follow them.
Don't you think the likes of, our athletes, the likes of David Rudisha, Kemboy, I mean, out there, they're considered like, stars, the ones you're talking about. But at the same time, Kenyans, including me and you perhaps, we struggle to name all these athletes. So do you think it's about how we appreciate these athletes? Does it have something to do with how Kenyans appreciate this?
That is usually a very easy narrative to try and blame the Kenyans for it. But I'll give you an example. Let's look at last year's World Championships in August in London. Kenya was the defending champion, having won in 2015 in Beijing for the athletics. So you'd have expected that there would be the amount of hype that would have been to our team going there would have been at another level.
Yes.
3 athletes actually are known globally to have retired at those games. And I know you can only remember two. We know Usain Bolt and we know Mo Farah.
Yes.
Yeah, these were their last games. They retired. You remember the 100 meters dash for Usain Bolt? We knew about it. It was publicized. It was his last race. We didn't even finish the 100 meters, but it was so big.
It was a big affair.
It was a big affair. But do you know that Kimboi was retiring in the same?
Actually, nobody even talked about it.
Exactly.
So
we did not take advantage.
Where is this gap? Why are we seeing all
So
this?
I think Kimboi did his part. He's won many championships. He's an
performed
Olympic
really
champion.
well on this
He's done
tracks.
as well. So I would say maybe for us, and I put myself into this group
Yes.
as part of the ecosystem of federations here, we did not do the little bit to market. We did not do enough to market the team that was going to London. Yeah. Most times, I'll give you another example again coming from marathons. You will know about the Beijing Marathon, for example, on the morning that it's happening. When you see somebody putting the results, there's no hype towards the race.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, Kenyans do not know now that we'll have the London Marathon, for example, coming up in April. We'll have, I think it's Daniel Wanjiru defending champion. You'll have Mary Kaitani, who is going for the world record or for the course record. We'll have the top marathoner, Eliud Kipchoge, going for the same title. I would hear that in BBC. If you listen to that, because it's in London, so BBC is actually covering who are the favorites for that race. But we're not talking about it in Kenya.
It's strange, even local marathons, people don't talk about them as that much on media, especially. Now, let's talk about the marketing bit of it. One of the biggest or the largest betting companies cancelled, all sponsorship with regards to, these clubs in Kenya. I mean, when you talk about the likes of Usain Bolt and all these athletes, they get a lot of support from this, private sector. So here in Kenya, things are different.
I don't think the word is support, because we go to that in this idea, serikali in this idea, it's not support. The private sector get value from going behind these particular athletes. They actually get a return.
Yes.
Yes. If you just check, Usain Bolt has got, 4 million followers on Twitter. So if he's driving a Mercedes and takes a photo there, it's a value for the brand, and therefore they associate with that. Yeah. So it is actually value. And if the example that you've given of some of the betting companies withdrawing,
the sponsorship, yeah.
Assuming that these were completely commercial decisions. If I'm sitting as a marketing manager and suddenly my budget is cut by half because of a new tax law, what will I do? I'll actually go and say I have to cut my spending. So I look at the assets that are giving me the lowest return. If you'll notice, the betting companies have not stopped advertising on newspapers. They have not stopped advertising on television.
Ironically, the betting is all about football and all these other
Yes, but they know where their audience is. So what they're actually telling us is that they are not getting any value from sponsoring the sports, and they can do without it. They can actually do without it and just focus where I saw they're sponsoring. I saw a squeeze back when the Australian Open was going on, tennis. Yeah, from one of the local betting companies.
Actually, they're also sponsoring teams in the English Premier League. So let's talk about governments, and let's not just zero in Kenya. Let's just go continental, okay? Yeah. If you look at the sports ministry, apparently they're the ones who are funded the lowest. It's not a priority of almost all governments in Africa. So do you think it's about time that governments also put sports, give it the seriousness it deserves?
Well, sports is the biggest industry. You invest in it, you reap from it. What is actually happening now, and really within most of the third world countries, they have other priorities. Education is a priority. Health is a priority. So sports seems to be the thing that is left behind. And this is not a Kenyan thing, as you've mentioned. We've seen this across a lot of countries. Actually, even in the developed countries like the UK, a lot of UK sport funding comes from their lottery. So they had to find something, their national lottery, to fund their sport. The same thing is happening in South Africa. Sport is now being funded by their lottery. And I think this is something that they tried out in Kenya. It's not, I think now with the Sports Act, it's there, that there's going to be a sports lottery eventually, maybe with the sports fund, something is being worked out. But the priority within a country, a third world country, will not always be sports. Education and health will always take a priority. before you actually come to sports.
Yeah.
And then eventually, obviously, you don't put any money in, you don't get results. I think we are lucky. Kenya is basically has the highest medal count of the Olympic Games to date. But
I was about to say that despite the low funding and people not giving sports the priority it deserves, our athletes happen to perform well when it comes to these Olympics and other competitions. Do you think if they could have given just a little bit of support, then the results could have been different?
I think so. I don't think we've invested anywhere near what other countries invest for the medals we have. So our investment per medal is very, very low compared to what other countries do. But if you notice that the countries that actually in Africa that do take home some medals, Ethiopians, Kenyans obviously, a little bit. South Africa in 800 meters, they seem to have been doing well. Some years back we had Namibia really doing well on the 200 meters dash. They had one athlete. But all our medals, and the last time I counted, I think we had a total of 86 medals in the Olympic Games. We've only had 2 medals that have not been outside athletics. And that was boxing. I think we had Bilali and Wangila as well. Yeah, the boxer, he got a gold medal. Yeah. So really, we are 26 sports, of which 20 Olympic sports operate in this country are active. We've hardly ever qualified more than 4, and we only get medals in 1. So we need to actually think about the entire spectrum. Football is a good example. Football is by far the most popular sport in this country. Yeah, but we've not been able to go past the regional. Actually,
the latest ranking had it puts Harambee Stars at position 106. Even Uganda is ranked better than Kenya.
Yeah, and I think that it goes back to investment. If you are not investing in development at the ground level from primary school level, proper coaching at that level, there's no way you're going to harvest good players for Harambee Stars. We'll continuously be disappointed. Yeah.
And before we talk about the newly appointed cabinet secretary, that is Rashida Chessa, this is an appointment that so many people have received with mixed reaction. There's an athlete who's representing Kenya in the ongoing Winter Olympics in South Korea. Is this another field that maybe Kenyans can explore?
This is actually the second athlete we've had at the Winter Olympics. And being on the equator, obviously, the Winter Games are not an obvious choice for us. But we now need to start tapping into the more than 3 million Kenyans living outside this country.
The diaspora.
In the diaspora. I mean, they do big remittances into this country. They have a good connection with this country. And some of the youngsters that, like Sabrina was born in Kenya, then they moved to Australia, Austria, and she's grown up there. There's no reason why she cannot compete for the country. So we should start seeing ourselves moving into other disciplines that are probably not very well developed here or even totally disadvantaged. And this year, I think it was also quite interesting. And I think starting today, we start seeing the Nigerian girls also at the Winter Games. So, and that's the first time.
They have a huge following on social media.
Yes, and this is the first time actually a Nigerian have participated at the Winter Games. At least for Kenya, this was the second time we had Philip Boyd, a couple of it. I think he did two Winter Olympics. So it's a good chance to see. I would expect to see that one of the other things that the Kenyans living in diaspora have an advantage of, that, for example, Sabrina is ranked 300 in Austria.
In Austria.
So she would never have participated for Austria, but she could easily participate for Kenya. So we find in other sports it's also possible that using the infrastructure in those other countries, they can actually come up. We've seen that in swimming. We've had swimming in other countries. In Rio Games, we had an athlete in hurdles who lived in the US, and I think a Kenyan athlete. Yeah.
Yes, I think diasporas are listening. You said we have about 3 million people in the diaspora. Now, let's talk about the Ministry of Sports in Kenya. We've talked about, various governments who don't make sports a priority in Africa. And I think a good example is the Kenyan Ministry of Sports. there are a lot of people who are saying that this ministry that is underfunded. The people who said the previous minister or the cabinet secretary did not perform that well. I mean, let's talk about the entry of the current CS. And perhaps, do you think he's going to turn around tables?
I think, first of all, the new CS has a complete full entry because in a month's time, we'll be having probably 200 participants into the Commonwealth Games. And this comes at the backdrop of the Rio Games. We've not forgotten what happened in Rio. We're not sure the whole story. The report is still out there.
Yes.
So Kenyans are actually waiting to see. We also know that we have a new team at the National Olympic Committee. Yeah. I'm part of that team. So this team will also be looking to prove themselves at the Commonwealth Games. The new CS will also be looking to deliver on the government promises for some of the stadiums.
Yeah.
Yeah. That some of them, if you listen to the deputy president during the SOI Awards, we expect about in the next few months, some of those stadiums will be completed. Yeah. So I think fairly, considering where we are in our development level, the government is doing something, fairly in consideration to where we are. We still have to worry about education, we still have to worry about health, but there is attention.
So we still have a long way to go when it comes to sports.
Yeah.
So if they continue to be underfunded, I mean, do you expect the new CS to do some sort of a magic?
What I would probably, if I was asked, if I was to consult,
Yes.
I would probably say that we probably need to change where we're investing. We need to probably draw our priorities a little different. I mean, it's good to have stadiums. But stadiums are elite. It's at the end of your career that you actually play at a stadium. Yeah. If I look at myself, I played badminton despite the fact that I was brought up in what would be considered a slum. Yeah. So in a sport that would be a bit privileged and not, not easy for everybody to go into. But having been brought up in Shaurimo, those facilities around us growing up, where we could play badminton, those are social halls.
Yes.
And those social halls had boxing, had karate. In fact, Shaurimo was actually like the capital city of basketball.
Yes.
Most of the basketballers came from there. So it didn't matter. We had facilities where we could play. I could play in the Jericho Lumumba Hall. I could play in the Bahati Hall. I could play in the Pumwani Hall. Now, these halls are either in bad state or...
I was about to ask you if they still exist because...
I know like the Lumumba Hall we used to play at one time, the whole floor came apart, the roof was leaking. And so the guys growing up there now don't have the same opportunity that I had to train there and play until the Commonwealth Games. Yeah. So we need to actually say, yes, it's good to have the stadiums, but what are we doing at development level?
Nurturing talent.
Yeah, because if you look at athletics, for example, the athletes work very hard. If you go to Iten, they are training hard. And the thing is, because we do not need serious infrastructure to run a marathon or to run long distance, we just need our hills and our roads. We are actually at a level playing ground with the rest of the world. The minute you bring in sports that require facilities, swimming, squash, hockey, we only have one turf and turf pitch in the country. The minute you start bringing those things in, you start finding we start losing out. We actually start losing out. So I would say that maybe the new CS needs to look at how to prioritize whatever budgets are there. For example, we'll be sending more than 200 athletes to the Commonwealth Games. Maybe about 10 or 15 disciplines will be participating. There are going to be airfares, there are going to be allowances. A lot of money is going to be spent there, maybe 400 or 500 million as a budget. But how much have we spent in preparing the teams to go for these games? It's not just enough that you are the...
compete,
it's not enough that you're just the best in the country in table tennis or in badminton. Yeah.
Fair enough. And we've talked about governments for the better part of the show. Let's talk about the private sector. I mean, if you look at the English Premier League, it has been sponsored by Barclays for a very long time, the likes of Fly Emirates. So do you think the private sector also have a major role to play when it comes to Africa, sports in Africa?
Well, I think corporates, the way corporates do business has changed over the last 20 to 30 years. And 30 years ago, the bottom line was not as important as it is today. So if you look at the case of Kenya, they had a lot of the big corporates were supporting teams. But as we got into the 90s, the bottom line, the return to the investors became very critical. Every managing director out there has to answer to his board on the bottom line. People who've invested in the company, they need to get their money back. So the money that actually comes to sports is money from marketing budgets. Now, the marketing manager has to put money where he's getting some money back. If he's going to pay for a billboard on Mombasa Road or Uhuru Highway, it's because there are eyeballs there.
Yes.
People are seeing it, and at the end of the day, it's going to sell. So we need to actually think as sports federations, what are we giving back to the corporate world so that we are attractive to them? Yes.
They feel like they're investing in this sports.
They're going to invest
not just as sponsors.
Yes, when they invest in the sports, we need to give them something back. And that can only be done through fans. Do you have a following? Are actually people coming to the stadiums? I know there's been a lot of effort to just a study, but this has to go to the next level so that corporates will actually chase us. Yeah, corporates will chase you if you have the people. It's as simple as that. Yeah, sports is just a marketing avenue for all these corporates. Yeah.
I hope the relevant authorities are listening. Many thanks, Peter Gacheru, for your input. Peter Gacheru is the CEO IMG. And before we wrap up the show tonight, just a reminder of what we did ask you earlier when we were starting the show. We did ask you if you support the travel advisory by Kenya against South Sudan, bearing in mind that, they kidnapped about 2 pilots who were released yesterday after about, was it 11 or 20 million was paid by an insurance company. So 77% of you say yes, you support the Kenyan government, and just 23% of you say no. At Kadhilu says, why should Kenyans living in South Sudan be treated badly? And Sudan's, okay, this is a bit sensational. At Mzalendo Tetu says, Kenyans work on the reverse. They will flock in South Sudan to witness what travel advisory looks like. Interesting. One final comment here from... okay, let me skip that one. At Godias Ndiko says it's upon the state to protect its citizens. Even if the states are friends, it doesn't mean the people are. Many thanks for your feedback. And that brings us to the end of our show tonight. Remember, this show is aired every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 11 p.m. Until tomorrow, same place, same time. Bye-bye, and have a very good night.